The first gunshot shattered the stillness of the evening like thunder in a cloudless sky. Jackson Wilcox dropped to a crouch, the Winchester rifle in his hands before his knee hit dirt. 20 years of survival instincts don't die easy, no matter how deep a man tries to bury them. Past always finds you, he muttered, scanning the horizon with eyes that had seen too much death to be fooled by distance or fading light. 3 years he'd spent building this place, tucked away in the shadow of Devil's Ridge. 3 years of honest work after a lifetime that had earned him a reputation that still made men whisper his name in saloons from Texas to Montana territory. The notorious bounty hunter who'd hunted men across 4 states after the war. Between the states had thought he'd finally outrun his ghosts. The second shot rang out, closer now, followed by panic shouting. Through the brush 50 yards ahead, a figure burst into view. A young woman, clothes torn and dirty, running as if the devil himself were on her heels. And maybe he was, because 2 riders emerged from the tree line behind her, closing fast. The girl spotted Wilcox and changed direction, sprinting toward him. That's when he saw it, the metal collar around her neck, catching the dying sunlight like a beacon of shame. It wasn't just any collar. The intricate design and distinctive snake emblem were unmistakable even at this distance. Blackwater, Wilcox whispered, the name like acid on his tongue. In one fluid motion born from 1,000 deadly encounters, Wilcox raised his Winchester, sighted, and squeezed the trigger. The first rider's chest erupted in red as he tumbled backward off his horse. The second managed to draw his Colt, but Wilcox's second shot caught him square in the throat before his weapon cleared leather. The girl staggered to a stop 10 feet away, eyes wild with fear and exhaustion. She couldn't be more than 17, Mexican by the look of her, with long black hair matted with dirt and blood. But it was the collar that held Wilcox's attention. Crude iron with familiar engravings that spoke of ownership, bondage, and a trade he'd once been part of. "Please," she gasped in accented English, her fingers clawing at the metal band that had rubbed her skin raw. "Help me get it off. I cannot breathe with this thing." Wilcox approached slowly, holstering his weapon. "Easy now, girl. Let me see." The girl flinched when he reached toward her, then forced herself to be still. Up close, the craftsmanship of the collar confirmed his worst fears, a complex locking mechanism designed by someone who understood that hope was the cruelest torture of all. "You know them?" she asked, noticing the recognition in his eyes. "Used to." Wilcox checked the bodies of the 2 men, confirming they were dead, before scanning the ridge again. "There are more coming." She nodded, trembling now that the immediate danger had passed. "5, maybe 6. They'll be looking for these 2 soon. The one with the beard, Dixon, he tracks like an Apache." Wilcox's jaw tightened at the name. Frank Dixon, the butcher of the border territories. A man who enjoyed his work too much, even by the loose standards of men who trafficked in human misery. "Name's Jackson Wilcox," he said, already calculating how much time they had. "This is my ranch." "Maria," she whispered. "Maria Santos." "Well, Maria Santos, we need to get inside. Now." As they hurried toward the main house, Wilcox tried to ignore the voice in his head, telling him to put her back on the trail and ride in the opposite direction. Fast. He'd spent 3 years building something resembling a decent life, and he knew exactly what helping this girl meant. War was coming to his doorstep. Again. The lock on Maria's collar gleamed dully in the lamplight as Wilcox examined it at his kitchen table. His fingers traced the mechanism with the familiarity of an old acquaintance, one he'd hoped never to meet again. "This is Blackwater's work, all right," he muttered. "I'd know it anywhere." Maria sat rigidly in the chair opposite him, watching his every move. "You know how to open it?" "Yeah, oh, I know." Wilcox met her eyes. because I helped design the damn thing. Her expression didn't change, but something shifted behind her eyes. Wariness, perhaps, or the recognition of a predator, even one that wasn't currently hunting her. After Gettysburg, I drifted south, Wilcox continued, focusing back on the lock. Took work as a bounty hunter, specialized in tracking fugitives across the border territories. His fingers worked as he spoke, feeling out the mechanism. The collars were Victor Blackwater's idea, a way to mark his property. Each lock has a specific sequence. 3 turns left, 2 right, then press the center. Get it wrong, and it locks permanently. They told me that, Maria said quietly. Dixon made me watch when they put it on Juanita. She tried to remove it herself. The collar? She swallowed hard. It closed so tight it nearly took her head off. Wilcox's hands stilled for a moment. That sounds like Victor. Always was one for object lessons. How do you know him? We rode together for a time. Shame colored his voice. Back when I didn't much care who I worked for, long as the money was good. He continued working the lock, his weathered hands moving with precision. Victor wasn't always the monster he is now. War changed him, like it changed a lot of men. He lost everything. Plantation, family, his place in the world. Started out catching runaways for the reward money. Wilcox's eyes darkened. Then I took a job that went bad, real bad. Turned out Blackwater wasn't just trafficking runaways. He was kidnapping innocent folk too. Women and children from border towns. Like me, Maria said. Like you. Wilcox's jaw tightened. I couldn't stomach it, so I put a bullet in his brother James and sabotaged their whole operation. Cost Victor a small fortune and his only kin. And he's been looking for you ever since? Seems that way. The lock clicked beneath his fingers, almost there. What's your story, girl? How'd you end up with that collar? Maria's hand went unconsciously to her throat. My family had a small ranch near the border. Not much, but it was ours. 2 months ago, Blackwater's men came through. Said we owed protection money. Her voice hardened. My father refused. He'd fought with Juarez against the French. Said he'd rather die than kneel to thieves. Brave man. Yes, and they made him pay for it. Her eyes burned with a rage that seemed too intense for her young frame. Dixon shot him first, made us watch. Then my mother, then my brother. They were going to kill me too, but Dixon said I'd fetch a good price at the mining camps up north. And you escaped? 3 days ago. They were moving us north. 12 of us, all wearing these. She touched the collar. I got lucky during a river crossing. Guard got careless. I ran. A faint sound outside caught Wilcox's attention. He held up a hand for silence, moving to the window. Nothing but darkness and the wind through the pines. They're watching, Maria whispered. They always watch first. Wilcox nodded grimly and returned to the lock. Victor likes to know what he's walking into. Smart, cautious. He enjoys the fear, Maria corrected. Lets it build. Wilcox worked the final sequence of the lock. There was a soft click, and the collar fell away, revealing angry red welts beneath. Maria's hand flew to her throat, touching the raw skin with trembling fingers. For a moment, she looked as if she might weep. Then her expression hardened into something else entirely. A look Wilcox had seen in the mirror too many times to mistake. Vengeance. They'll be coming for me, she said, and now they'll be coming for you too. Wilcox rose from the table and moved to the window again. In the distance, pinpricks of torchlight had appeared on the ridge. Looks like they're already here. 7 riders, Wilcox counted, watching the torches moving down the ridge. Spread out. Professional. Victor doesn't hire amateurs, Maria replied, joining him at the window. Dixon's the tall one with the beard. Blackwater always stays back until the shooting stops. The one on the left, with the silver spurs, that's Quincy. Used to be cavalry. Deadly with that Spencer carbine. Wilcox raised an eyebrow. You've been paying attention. I've been planning. There was steel in her voice. Every day in that camp I watched them. Learn their habits, their weaknesses. Wilcox nodded, already formulating a plan. There's a root cellar under the kitchen. Hidden panel beneath the rug. You'll be safe there until... No. Her voice was firm. I won't hide anymore. This isn't your fight, girl. It became my fight when they murdered my family. Maria's eyes flashed in the lamplight. Besides, they won't just take me and leave. They'll burn this place to the ground. Make sure nobody else gets ideas about helping their property escape. Wilcox studied her for a moment, remembering a time when he'd been the hunter instead of the hunted. The determination in her eyes reminded him of another lifetime, when he'd tracked a man for 3 weeks through Montana territory after the bastard had killed his partner. Some fires can't be extinguished with reason. Can you shoot? He asked finally. My father taught me when I was 12. A ghost of a smile crossed her face. That's why Dixon killed him first. Without another word, Wilcox moved to a large chest against the far wall. From it, he removed 2 Winchester rifles, a Colt Navy revolver, and a Remington Army model. The Winchester's got better range, he explained, handing her one of the rifles. 15 rounds, lever action. The Remington's for close work. 6 shots, packs more punch than it looks like. Maria checked both weapons with practiced hands, confirming they were loaded and ready. The ease with which she handled them told Wilcox she hadn't been exaggerating about her skills. Now listen carefully, he continued, sketching a rough map of the property on a scrap of paper. The house sits on high ground, giving us good sight lines to the north and east. South side's got the barn for cover. West has the paddock wall, 3 feet of solid stone. He marked defensive positions with quick X's. They'll likely split up. Try to flank us from multiple sides. We stay mobile, use the shadows. When they think we're here, he tapped one position, we'll be over there. What about the barn? Maria asked. We could set up an ambush. Wilcox nodded approvingly. Good thinking. Lot of shadows in there. Plenty of cover, but it's also the obvious place to check. We'd need to make it count. He moved to the window again. The torches were closer now, maybe half a mile out. The riders had stopped, conferring. After a moment, 2 detached from the group, circling wide, scouts sent to probe the defenses. See that? Wilcox pointed. Dixon's sending men to check our flanks. Smart, but predictable. What do we do? Wilcox's eyes narrowed. Spring the trap early. He grabbed his rifle and a box of ammunition. Got a Spencer carbine in the bedroom. Cabinet by the window. This key opens it, he said, handing her a small brass key. Get it, and meet me back here in 2 minutes. While Maria retrieved the weapon, Wilcox moved quickly through the house, extinguishing lamps and shifting furniture to create choke points and cover. He'd built this place with defense in mind. Old habits die hard, and now those precautions would be put to the test. Maria returned with the Spencer, slinging it over her shoulder. Without being asked, she had also brought extra ammunition and a canteen of water. Let's test your aim, Wilcox said, pointing to an empty whiskey bottle on the fence post 50 yards out. That bottle. Standing shot, offhand. Maria raised the Winchester, took a breath, and fired. The bottle exploded into shards. Good enough? She asked, not bothering to hide her pride. For the first time, Wilcox allowed himself a grim smile. It'll do. A sudden movement near the barn caught his eye. One of Dixon's scouts moving between buildings. Hold, Wilcox whispered, raising his rifle. We've got company. The scout paused at the corner of the barn, scanning the dark house. He was young, maybe 20, with a carbine in his hands and a revolver at his hip. Inexperienced, from the way he stood exposed against the moonlight. Take him? Maria asked, her rifle already finding the target. Wilcox considered for a moment. No, let him report back. Better they think we're not home. And then we pick our moment. Wilcox's eyes were cold. First rule of hunting, girl. Sometimes you let the prey come to you. Together they extinguished the last lamp in the house, moving into darkness as Blackwater's men drew ever closer to springing a trap that wasn't meant for them. The 7 riders halted just beyond effective rifle range, their torches forming a loose semicircle around the darkened ranch house. After a brief consultation, one rider broke from the group and approached alone, a Winchester balanced across his saddle. "That's Blackwater," Maria whispered from their position by the west window. Wilcox studied the approaching figure through his rifle sights. Victor Blackwater hadn't changed much in 5 years, still tall and lean in the saddle, with that same air of absolute authority. His black duster and wide-brimmed hat cut an imposing silhouette against the torchlight. "Jackson Wilcox," Blackwater called out, stopping 30 yards from the house. "I know you're in there. 5 years I've been looking for you, old friend." Beside him, Wilcox felt Maria stiffen, but he kept his eyes on his target. "I see you've taken something that belongs to me," Blackwater continued, "something with a very distinctive piece of jewelry. Now, I'm a reasonable man. Send her out, and maybe we can discuss terms like civilized folk." When Wilcox didn't respond, Blackwater chuckled, a sound that carried easily through the night air. "You remember how business works, don't you, Wilcox? Everything has its price, even mercy." "He's stalling," Maria whispered. "Dixon's not with them anymore." Wilcox had already noticed. Frank Dixon, Blackwater's deadly shadow, had disappeared during the parley. A classic diversion. Blackwater talks while his enforcer circles around for the kill. "He'll try for the back door," Wilcox said quietly. "Cellar entrance too, if he knows it's there." "What do we do?" "Change the game." Wilcox gestured toward the barn. "See that hay wagon by the barn? When I give the word, put a bullet in the left front wheel. Then move to the bedroom fast." Maria nodded, understanding immediately. The wagon was positioned perfectly to provide cover for anyone approaching from the south side. "What do you want, Victor?" Wilcox finally called back. "Simple terms," Blackwater replied, visibly pleased to have drawn a response. "Give me the girl, burn this place to the ground as an apology for harboring my property, and take a bullet to the brain for what you did to James. Quick and clean, out of respect for our history." "That's mighty generous of you." "More than you deserve," Blackwater's voice hardened. "You've got 1 minute to decide, Wilcox. Then we do this the hard way." "I already decided 5 years ago," Wilcox nodded to Maria. "Now." Her shot struck the wagon wheel with a sharp crack, sending splinters flying. Simultaneously, Wilcox fired at Blackwater, intentionally missing by inches. The combined shots had the desired effect. Chaos erupted as Blackwater's horse reared, nearly throwing its rider, and the men behind him scattered for cover. "Go!" Wilcox hissed. And they both broke from the window, racing through the darkened house to their new positions. Outside, Blackwater's men were returning fire, bullets splintering wood and shattering glass. From the bedroom window, Maria had a clear view of the side yard. "2 on the south fence," she called, dropping to one knee. She fired 3 rapid shots, and one of the shadows by the fence crumpled. A crash from the kitchen told Wilcox that Dixon had made his move. "Cover the front," he ordered, moving toward the sound. "Don't let them rush the house." In the kitchen, the back door hung open, its frame splintered. A shadow moved behind the pantry. Dixon, or one of his men. Wilcox fired without hesitation, the buckshot from his shotgun tearing through the thin wood. A man's scream confirmed the hit, but it wasn't Dixon's voice. One of the hirelings. Then, Wilcox reloaded quickly, ears straining for any sound above the gunfire outside. A floorboard creaked behind him. the only warning before something heavy struck him across the shoulders. Wilcox staggered forward, losing his grip on the shotgun as he fell. He rolled instinctively, drawing his revolver as he came up. Frank Dixon stood in the doorway to the hall, blood streaming from a gash on his forehead, but grinning like a wolf. In his hand was a wicked Bowie knife, the blade catching the moonlight from the broken window. "Hello, Wilcox," Dixon said, his voice a rasp. "Been a long time." "Not long enough," Wilcox replied, sighting down his Colt. Dixon moved with surprising speed for a big man, diving behind the kitchen table as Wilcox fired. The bullet splintered wood where Dixon's head had been a heartbeat earlier. Outside, the gunfire had intensified. Maria was holding her own, judging by the steady rhythm of her Winchester, but they were outnumbered. It was only a matter of time before Blackwater's men found a way in. Dixon upended the heavy oak table, sending it crashing toward Wilcox. The makeshift battering ram caught him in the legs, pinning him momentarily against the wall. It was all the opening Dixon needed. He closed the distance in 2 long strides, knife raised for a killing blow. Wilcox blocked with his forearm, the blade slicing through his sleeve and into flesh. Pain lanced up his arm, but he used the momentum to drive his knee into Dixon's stomach. The bigger man grunted but didn't go down. They grappled in the confined space, each fighting for control. Despite his wound, Dixon was strong, his fist connecting with Wilcox's jaw in a blow that sent stars exploding across his vision. Wilcox countered with an elbow to Dixon's ribs, feeling something crack beneath the impact. Dixon headbutted him, splitting Wilcox's lip. Blood filled his mouth as they struggled for the knife still clutched in Dixon's hand. The weapon inched closer to Wilcox's throat. "Victor wants to kill you himself," Dixon growled, "but I'll tell him you didn't leave me much choice." With a surge of desperate strength, Wilcox slammed Dixon's knife hand against the edge of the cast iron stove. Once, twice, until the weapon clattered to the floor. But Dixon wasn't finished. He drew a hideout revolver from his boot, the barrel pressing into Wilcox's ribs. "End of the trail, bounty hunter," Dixon snarled. The gunshot was deafening in the enclosed space. But Wilcox felt no pain. Instead, Dixon's eyes widened in surprise, looking down at the spreading red stain on his own chest. In the doorway stood Maria, Wilcox's Remington smoking in her hands. "That's from my father," she said. Dixon stumbled backward, raising his gun with a final, desperate effort. Maria fired again, the bullet taking him between the eyes. This time he stayed down. "Blackwater's men breached the front," she said urgently. "I got 2, but the rest are inside." And Blackwater, a rifle shot from outside cut her off, the bullet splintering the door frame inches from her head. "He's in the barn," Wilcox realized, retrieving his weapons. "Using the high window as a sniper's nest. Smart." "What do we do?" Wilcox checked his ammunition. 2 shots left in the revolver, 4 in the shotgun. It would have to be enough. "We end this," he said grimly. "Stay behind me, and be ready to run if this goes bad." The house stood silent as they approached the front room, no movement visible through the shattered windows. The gunfire had stopped. The surviving members of Blackwater's gang had either fled or were lying low, waiting. Wilcox paused at the entrance to the parlor, listening. The faintest creak of floorboards came from inside. The third board past the fireplace, the one that always protested under weight no matter how many times he tried to fix it. "When I go in," he whispered to Maria, "circle around to the side window, the one by the bookcase. Get a clear shot if you can, but don't take it unless you're sure." She nodded, understanding. No need to specify the target. Wilcox took a deep breath, then kicked in the parlor door, shotgun leading the way. The interior was dark, furniture overturned during the earlier fighting. He moved silently, years of tracking experience guiding his steps around the creaky boards and loose nails. A shadow detached itself from beside the fireplace, a tall figure holding a revolver. Not Blackwater, one of his hired guns. "He said you'd come," the man said, his voice steady despite the situation. "Said you're predictable that way. Where is he?" "Right behind you," came Victor Blackwater's voice from the doorway. Wilcox froze, realizing too late he'd walked into a trap. In the dim light, he could just make out Blackwater's silhouette, a revolver aimed squarely at his back. "5 years," Blackwater said conversationally, stepping into the room. "5 years I've been looking for you, Jackson. Ever since you put James in the ground and cost me the biggest deal of my life. $20,000 that shipment was worth. Those were people, Victor, not merchandise. Everything's merchandise to someone." Blackwater shrugged. "I figured you'd gone soft when I heard about this place, playing rancher, trying to wash the blood off your hands. But I never thought you'd be stupid enough to steal from me again. The girl doesn't belong to you. Everything belongs to someone, old friend. The question is whether you're willing to pay the price of ownership." Blackwater moved fully into the light now, and Wilcox could see the years had not been entirely kind. Victor's once handsome face was lined with bitterness, his eyes colder than Wilcox remembered. He still carried himself with the arrogance of Southern aristocracy, but there was something desperate about him now, something broken. "You know," Blackwater continued, "I was going to make this quick, professional courtesy and all that, but now I'm thinking slow might be better." He gestured to his henchman. "Quincy here was a surgeon's assistant during the war. Knows all sorts of interesting ways to keep a man alive while taking him apart." Wilcox's eyes flicked to the window behind Blackwater, hoping for a glimpse of Maria. Nothing. "Don't worry about the girl," Blackwater said, following his gaze. "My men will find her. Dixon may be dead, but I've got others just as capable." "Dixon was a rabid dog," Wilcox replied, playing for time. "You were better than that once, Victor." Something flickered in Blackwater's eyes. Regret, perhaps, or the ghost of the man he'd once been. "We all make choices, Jackson. The war taught me that. When everything you believe in burns to ash, you either burn with it or you become the fire." The window behind Blackwater exploded inward, showering the room with glass. Maria appeared in the frame, but instead of firing, she threw something into the room. Dixon's knife, its blade finding Quincy's throat with lethal precision. The distraction was all Wilcox needed. He dropped to one knee as Blackwater fired, the bullet passing through the space where his head had been a moment before. Wilcox's shotgun roared in response, catching Blackwater in the shoulder and spinning him around. Despite the wound, Blackwater managed to return fire, his bullet grazing Wilcox's temple. Blood poured into Wilcox's eyes, half blinding him as he struggled to bring his weapon to bear again. Blackwater staggered forward, his gun trained on Wilcox's chest. "Should have killed me in Arizona," he gasped, blood staining his shirt. "That was your mistake." "No," came Maria's voice as she stepped through the broken window. "Your mistake was thinking she'd break." She raised her rifle and fired. Blackwater jerked backward, a look of genuine surprise crossing his face as he collapsed to the floor. His final shot went wild, embedding itself in the ceiling. Silence fell over the ranch, broken only by Wilcox's labored breathing and the distant whinny of a horse. "Think that's all of them?" Maria asked, helping Wilcox to his feet. Wilcox nodded, wincing as he probed the gash on his temple. "Rest probably scattered once Blackwater went down. They were loyal to him, not the cause." Maria helped him to a chair, then found a clean cloth to press against his wound. "You're bleeding bad." "Had worse." He looked up at her. "You're a hell of a shot." A ghost of a smile touched her lips. "Told you." They spent the next hour tending to their wounds and securing the property. 3 of Blackwater's men had survived and fled. The rest, including Blackwater, they buried at dawn in a patch of rocky soil behind the barn. Maria stood beside the graves, the Spencer rifle still clutched in her hands as if she couldn't quite believe it was over. "What happens now?" she asked as Wilcox tamped down the last shovelful of earth. "Now you decide," he replied, leaning on the shovel. "World's open to you. You could head to California, maybe. Start fresh where nobody knows you. And what about you?" Wilcox looked across the property, taking in the bullet-riddled house, the damaged fences, the blood-stained earth. 3 years of work, marked now by violence that had been chasing him all along. "Reckon I'll stay," he said finally. "Rebuild. It's what I do." Maria nodded, considering this. "The others are still out there. The ones in the wagon bound for the mines." "Yeah. You going after them?" Wilcox studied her face, young but no longer innocent, shaped by loss and hardened by survival. "Thinking about it. Got some old contacts, might know where to look." "I want in," she said simply. He should have refused, should have put her on the next stage to somewhere safe and civilized. But there was something in her eyes that he recognized, the same thing he saw in his own reflection each morning, a need to make something right in a world that had dealt nothing but wrongs. "It won't bring your family back," he warned. "I know that." Her voice was steady. "But it might save someone else's." Spring came early that year. The bullet holes in the ranch house had been patched, the fences rebuilt stronger than before. Wilcox had constructed a small cabin near the main house, Maria's place, though she spent most days working alongside him with the cattle and horses. They never spoke of love. The word felt too fragile for what they'd built, a partnership forged in gunfire and common purpose, a fortress against the darkness that had touched them both. On a warm evening in April, they sat on the porch watching the sunset paint Devil's Ridge in shades of gold and crimson. Wilcox pulled a folded document from his shirt pocket and handed it to Maria. "What's this?" she asked, unfolding the paper. "Deed to the North Pasture. 40 acres registered in your name at the county office. Not enough to replace what you lost, but it's a start." Maria stared at the document, her fingers tracing the official seal. "Why?" "Because everyone should have something that's theirs," he said simply. "Something nobody can take away." She nodded, carefully refolding the deed and tucking it into her pocket. "I got word from town yesterday. A man I paid at the saloon, the one with connections to the mining companies up north." Wilcox waited, recognizing the steel in her voice. "The wagon made it to Silver Peak. 12 people, just like I said." Her hand unconsciously touched the faint scars on her neck where the collar had been. "And there's talk that Victoria Blackwater is running things now?" "Victor's sister." "Never met her," Wilcox said, a note of caution in his voice. "They say she makes Victor look merciful. Used to run a plantation in Louisiana before the war. Had a reputation even then." Maria's eyes hardened. "She keeps a book with names. Everyone who ever crossed the family. Your name's at the top now." "Sounds like trouble," Wilcox observed, reaching for his rifle to check the action. Maria smiled, a dangerous expression that held no joy, only purpose. "She's offering $10,000 for the man who killed her brother. Double if they bring you in alive." She picked up her own Winchester, working the lever with practiced ease. "Guess we'd better be ready when they come." As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the land they'd fought for, Wilcox knew with certainty that their story was far from over. The past had found him once before. It would find him again. But this time, he wouldn't be facing it alone. Ladies and gentlemen, that was Land of Redemption, another tale from the untamed American frontier. If you enjoyed this journey with Jackson Wilcox and Maria Santos, remember to hit that subscribe button and ring the bell so you don't miss our next adventure. Next week, we'll be continuing this saga with Silver Peak Reckoning, where Wilcox and Maria track down Victoria Blackwater's operation in the mining camps of Nevada. Will they be able to free the remaining captives? Or has the vengeful sister of Victor Blackwater set a trap too deadly to escape? Special thanks to our Patreon supporters who make these stories possible. For those asking about the custom leather goods featured in our sponsor segment, use code FRONTIER at checkout for 15% off your first order. Until next time, this is Thomas Garrett reminding you that even in the darkest times, redemption awaits those brave enough to fight for it. See you on the trail.